All right, let's do it. It's Hit the Books time, Sweet 16 edition, alongside the basketball editor for The Score, Matthew Winick. Alongside, you know him from the Hit the Books college basketball channel, Corbie Craig. I am merely Brad Powers. We are going to give what each and every one of you want out there. That's best bets. We each got 2 best bets in Sweet 16 action. Can't ask for anything more than that. There's only 8 games coming up on the Thursday-Friday card. Before we get to those best bets, though, guys, I want to remind everybody that make sure, if you're watching on Twitter, make sure you're heading over to the YouTube channel so we can see your questions and comments live. Also, make sure you're subscribed to the Hit the Books YouTube channel so you can get notified in real time whenever a video of ours drops. We have tons of college football, college basketball content planned. We got some NFL draft coming up here as we get closer and closer to the draft. Finally, if you do enjoy our content, please smash that like button. It really helps us grow. Guys, before we get into best bets, I'll start off with you, Matthew. Any major takeaways from the first couple of rounds of the NCAA tournament? And first, let me say this. First show I've been doing with you. It's a pleasure, man.
Yeah, nice to be on. Hey, thanks for having me on. I mean, the obvious takeaway that it's kind of been beaten down to death, but it has to be reiterated just how poorly teams have been shooting from the field in this tournament. And you don't know if it's nerves, it's also kind of pace, but teams, I think, are in the low 30s at 3-point percentage. And that just has to be sort of in your thought process when you're making bets, especially teams that are reliant on the 3 against good defenses. And I think a lot of it is just some defenses are really, really stout, and they're showing that, and offenses haven't really adjusted yet. And that's something you got to think about moving forward here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, the poor shooting has led to the under being 35-17 so far in the tournament. So I never recommend you ever blindly bet something. But if you did, kudos. Yeah, you can probably buy, if you're betting a lot, you're probably driving around in a brand new car right now. Corbie, any major takeaways from you?
Yeah, a lot of unders. It seems that has steamed my numbers towards like a lot of overs in the Sweet 16. So that should be fun. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. But the main thing for me has been just the lack of dominance up top. We saw Auburn up 10 at halftime versus Houston. We saw Alabama struggling without Brandon Miller, though they have pieced together really big wins every single game without Brandon Miller really doing anything. It's just the lack of consistency at the top. Also, UCLA team who's banged up doesn't look too great and consistent. They did look good for most all of that Penn State game, but we just see a whole bunch of not Penn State, NC State. I mean Northwestern. Jeez, but we see a whole bunch of inconsistency throughout the tournament. There's not really been any team other than a UConn maybe that has impressed me start to finish of every game.
UConn team that might wink wink hint hint, that might be a team that appears later on in the show as far as the best bet category. And speaking of best bets, might as well get it started here. I mean, that's what people are tuning in for. Matthew, I'll start with you. We'll go hammer play, which is like a silver play. That's our number 2 play. And then we'll go sledgehammer play to close it out. That'll be our gold number 1 play of the Sweet 16. Your hammer play, Matthew.
Yeah, so it's funny. I just talked about the unders. I'm going with an under in for my hammer play, and that's going to be under 137.5 in San Diego State, Alabama. Look, San Diego State is a top 5 defense in KenPom, and people forget about Alabama. They think, 3-point shooting, Brandon Miller, fast pace. They're number 3. So we're knocking 2 of the 5 best defenses in KenPom in terms of analytically. But what San Diego State is best at is limiting teams' transition. They almost beat Arkansas in Maui earlier this year, except for like a really messed up defensive play down the stretch by Lamont Butler. But they're going to do their absolute best to keep this game as slow as possible. And Alabama can speed up anybody in the country. But what you find is when Alabama is in these slower games, they're heavily reliant on the three-pointer because they can't get to the rim as frequently. And San Diego State is one of the best three-point defenses in the country. That's where their emphasis is in the half court. So what's going to happen is Alabama is going to have to try to get to the rim in the half court. That's going to be a lot of their offense. On the other side of the ball, Alabama, with Charles Bediako down low, 7-footer, great rim protector. They have the number one 2-point percentage defense in the entire country. And San Diego State, let's be honest, aren't built around shooters. They have some guys that can knock it down from deep, but they have a pretty gross offense with a lot of mid-range jumpers, which Alabama is going to let them take. And I think if this game stays slow, if Alabama isn't hitting 15 three-pointers, under 137 seems like a pretty reasonable number for it to not climb over.
I've already bet it. You're not going to get any disagreement from me. Corbie, any thoughts on the under in the game?
Yeah, I like it. The most interesting thing to me is San Diego State plays out of their talent basis. So all year they play teams who they can basically just out physical. And I think that's where most of their offensive production even comes from. So getting an Alabama team who matches up really well, I think their offense struggles first off. And the only way that they stay in this game is the fact that they can play really strong, sound defense. And I lean that way. Also, 8 points is a lot of points, but I see a lot of people over that San Diego State +8. I don't know if I ruined Powers' player or if anybody has it, but it seems like a lot of points. And Alabama really offensively has struggled as of late. So I do like to side at the under 137.5, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Total 137.5. Side a little bit of Alabama money in the marketplace so far this week. I think you want to if you want San Diego State, I think you wait a little bit if you want to get the best of the number there. I'm not sure that the Alabama money slows down right now. Corbie, your hammer play for the Sweet 16.
Yeah, so I also like an under, and it would be in the Texas Xavier game. Texas Xavier under 148.5. I've talked about on this Hit the Book show basically all year. I don't think that Texas is a team that actually wants to play top 60 in tempo, though they've been forced to basically all year. Timmy Allen has been hurt as of late. He's not anymore, but that kind of sped up their tempo even in the games where they had a chance to slow it down in tournament. They weren't able to because their big was out. So this is kind of just still this notion that I think that they're not as fast as they show on paper, though over a course of an entire season, I think at this point, I might be wrong, but I'm sticking to my guts. I don't think that they want to play top 60 in tempo. On the other hand, Xavier, they have talented pieces. They have a really good offense. I mean, you see a team who had an assist on every single one of their points for the first 26 points, and I think that's pushed this number up due to the fact that they were able to do that, but that was versus Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh analytically grades out miserably. So I think I take basically nothing from that game. So I see a Texas team slowing this game down and stopping an Xavier team from basically doing much of anything that they want to do. Sean Miller's a great coach. He knows he's going to have to adjust. And so we're going to see a coaching battle more than a talent battle, in my opinion. So 148.5 in a coaching battle is a lot of points, and give me that under.
I have not bet this yet, side or total. Although I will say I did bet Xavier under both of their first two games. They did struggle. I thought obviously it's a team that likes to run, but we've seen them struggle shooting in both tournament games, and we've seen some slower tempo as well, especially in the second half of each of their games. Matthew, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I haven't bet this one either. To me, this is just a game where if one team's hitting shots and the other team isn't, that team's going to win because neither team takes a ton of threes, but they can get hot. We saw that from Texas in round one. And for me, that's something I might actually just completely sit out on. But I do agree the pace will probably be slower than as projected, just given how Texas has played all year.
Fair enough. Hammer play for me. I'm going to go with the biggest underdog on the board. I'm going to take Princeton +10. We talked about, Corbie talked about some of the parity. I just don't think you can be laying a significant amount of points when scoring's trending down. I think when you look at tempo in this game, I don't expect a fast tempo. Both teams are relatively average in terms of tempo, but I think if Princeton's going to stay in the game, they're going to slow it down, much to like they did against Arizona earlier. And I go to that Arizona game. It's a game that Princeton didn't shoot the ball well. 4 out of 24 from three-point range in that game, and yet they still were able to pull the outright upset. And then you saw them when they did shoot the ball fairly well against Missouri, they blow out the Tigers. I just think, Creighton's, statistically a really good team, efficiency-wise, offensively and defensively. But again, to lay 10 points in a Sweet 16 game when they don't have much experience in this round. And obviously Princeton doesn't have much experience. I just expect conservative game plans, slower tempo, lower scoring. That all to me trends towards the big underdog here. Give me Princeton plus 10. You guys agree or disagree?
I'll go first.
You got it,
you
Matthew.
want to go? I'll go first.
No, you got it.
I think that, look, that number is huge, and that's probably the right side. For me, I look at matchups, and Creighton couldn't be more different of a defense than Missouri, right? They're going to play back. They're going to make Princeton shoot mid-range jumpers and try to shoot over Ryan Kalkbrenner down low. I think that the under there might also be a decent play because of that. They're going to try to slow it down, and Princeton is a pretty good three-point defense, which is where Creighton's bread and butter was against Baylor, that and the free throw line. I do think Creighton, obviously you're not saying that Creighton's not going to win this game, but that number being as big as it is and Princeton playing with as much confidence as they are, I think that's a huge number, and it's probably the right side.
Corbie, your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me here is I had Baylor in the last game. I just have Baylor futures. I didn't bet the game in general. But watching that game, it seemed like Creighton was getting really lucky. And to put some stats behind my numbers, shot quality, I'm sure everybody's seen shot quality on the internet at this point. Shot quality had that halftime score of Baylor up 9 and the final score of Baylor winning that game outright versus a Creighton team who just was hitting everything. So I think that the market probably adjusted too much towards the idea that Creighton is a really good basketball team, which, don't get me wrong, they're good. But I don't think that they're this by any means. I like Princeton here. I hope Princeton can win. That would be the most fun possible outcome for the tournament. And I think that their offense and their strategies, their schemes give a lot of headaches to teams who haven't been pieced together to play that type of basketball. So Creighton hasn't seen anybody like a Princeton offense, I don't believe in. And 10 points is a lot to lay. So tend to agree on the side there.
Yeah, and obviously it comes down to making shots. I mean, I'm dead if Creighton's making shots like they were against Baylor. I will say this. I question the ability of Creighton to get a lot of second chance opportunities. They're well below average in offensive rebounding percentage. Princeton, believe it or not, top 10 in defensive rebounding percentages. So if Creighton's not shooting lights out like they were against Baylor, I think Princeton grabs a majority of the rebounds and not a lot of second chance points. So Princeton, again, for me, my hammer play, going right back to you, Matthew, for the Sledgehammer, your top pick of the Sweet 16.
I'm going with Gonzaga money line. I think that this is a matchup. This is a matchup for UCLA that we've seen them struggle with in previous years. And obviously this is not the same Gonzaga team as in the past. There is no top draft pick on this roster. But UCLA is dealing with personnel issues. Jalen Clark out for the rest of the season, which is huge, against Julian Strawther, who's probably Gonzaga's best offensive creator. Adem Bona's back, their freshman big man, but he averages almost 6 fouls per 40 minutes. And Drew Timme puts big men in foul trouble in nearly every game, and UCLA has no big man depth. The biggest flaw with this Gonzaga roster is their defense. They're in the bottom 150 in effective field goal percentage defense per KenPom, but UCLA is 144th. Like, they're not shooting efficient basketball. Jaime Jaquez basically just drives to the rim, gets to the free throw line, shoots mid-range jumpers. But Anton Watson is a hell of a defender, and he's going to be on him all game. They both kind of play that 4-man position. And if Jaquez isn't going off, Tiger Campbell went 0 for 9 in their last game against Northwestern, which I've been saying all year, Northwestern is just not a very talented team. UCLA did not beat them by much. I just don't see this Gonzaga team looks motivated. Drew Timme wants to get back to the Final Four in probably his final season in college. I'm pretty surprised that UCLA is favored in this game. So I'm going to go Gonzaga with the money line. I'm going to just think that the talent outweighs Gonzaga's talent outweighs UCLA's talent. And that as long as Bona's in foul trouble, Timme should have a huge game. As long as one of their guards is shooting the three well, which we saw multiple of them in the second half against TCU, shoot that ball when had a great offensive half. As long as one of them's scoring from deep and helping Timme out in the secondary role, I don't really see why Gonzaga loses this game.
Corbie, your thoughts on the game?
Listen, Matthew, I don't know if you've watched our show a lot, but you don't have to convince anybody here of a Gonzaga future. We took 34-1 in January, and this is my squad. So you saying that just gives me the mental pat on the back. I agree. I like this matchup. Listen, you don't have to bash me too hard to give me to back Drew Timme. I think Drew Timme is the footwork and the ability to score at any moment. He scored 29 in the game the other day. His ability to give his team a bucket when they need it the most can't be capped or underappreciated enough. He's one of the best I've ever seen at it. Just the ability to say, give me the ball and take it a highly efficient shot every single time. So can UCLA hit their shots? Possible. I don't think Tiger Campbell's a very good basketball player. relative to what he's priced into the market. So I don't love this UCLA team. Also, injury issues, depth issues. We've seen it. And so give me the Zags. It's going to be tough. I think that the total was interesting in this one. But if it plays towards the Gonzaga pace, I think Gonzaga wins this by 4 or 5. If not, it's going to be a complete toss-up, but a toss-up that I think the Zags can still win at UCLA's pace.
Yeah, John, in the chat, I'll get to a couple chat questions here. Who's likely to dictate pace? I mean, that's ultimately who you come down to decide. I think one thing you can look at, like market indicators, if you start seeing a little bit of money on the under, I think that trends well for UCLA. You see money a little bit on the over. I think it trends well for Gonzaga. I'm also curious injury-wise, Singleton. I mean, the injury live watching it in the second round game against Northwestern looked like, he broke his ankle. Badly sprained. I just don't know how 100% if he's going to be close to 100% for this game. I'm not sure how that gets priced in. Early money's on UCLA. Surprised me. I'm with you, Matthew. I'm on Gonzaga here, +2, and also money line. And maybe I can get a 2.5. We'll see where the market trends. Another question in the chat. Final 4 ticket on the Zags from Jeffrey, 18-1. Here's I'll give my thought process when it comes to hedging. Is it life-changing money to start? If it is, then okay, then we can start talking hedging. If it's not, it's 18-1. You're only in the Sweet 16 round. I personally would not be hedging at this point in the Sweet 16 round. That's just me. Your guys' thoughts on hedging, big future tickets.
Yeah, same idea. If it's not life-changing or if it's not going to make a substantial difference in your day-to-day, then don't worry about it. Too much stress being put on the idea of like 18-1, how much money did you actually get down on it? Like if it's substantial, then maybe consider it. But I see a lot of times these people ask these questions with like just some Christmas money they toss on an 18-1, feel good about a ticket, and then they're trying to get out. But no, I think if you think it's a correct bet on the other side, then yeah, for sure. If you like UCLA to win this game, then you're getting a good price to get out of your bet. But if you think Gonzaga still has a chance to make it to the Final Four, there's no reason to hop out of this bet, in my opinion.
Matthew, your thoughts on hedging future tickets?
Yeah, I agree at this point. Like I said, it's a little early, especially where the line's priced at now. I'm not sure that that's going to make a huge impact in terms of the future ticket.
Yeah, and Jeffrey, $200 in the chat. Here's another thing that would worry me. Next round matchup, Connecticut. I would say Connecticut's a slight favorite against Gonzaga. Then the round after that, we're talking Final Four. They're playing at Houston. They're probably an underdog there. So, I would let it ride right now. Unless if you really like UCLA to beat Gonzaga, then go ahead. And if you're wanting to make a money line bet on UCLA to begin with, go ahead and do that. But right now, I wouldn't be hedging out at this point on 18-1 in this round for the Sweet 16. Another chat question before we get to Corbie's pick. Did you guys bet anything today? I can tell you what this is from Don in the chat. I can tell you what I bet. I don't know if I'd bet them at the current numbers, but I took both unders in the CBI games, and I took both favorites in the CBI games. Generally speaking, we're now getting to the semifinal round. These teams are playing. Both underdogs are playing 3 games in 3 days. A lot of overtime, so we got a lot of tired legs. We got 4 overtime games in the last couple of days. Specifically, Eastern Kentucky's played back-to-back overtime games. They don't have a deep bench. All 5 starters are played back-to-back 30-plus minutes in both games. So I preferred the Southern Utah side, even with an interim coach there. So that's for me. Did you guys bet anything in the NIT? I didn't touch the NIT today.
Yeah, I took that first half under in the Southern Utah game. I think it was 73.5 this morning. So I'm not sure what it's at now. It seems the unders have been getting steamed all weekend. So 73.5 first half. I do agree towards the side of Southern Utah, interim coach playing for his potential next job. So, and he's a really good coach, probably one of the more sought after coaches, secondary coaches in the nation. So they have the coaching edge. And Eastern Kentucky, you can't downplay the fact they've played 2 overtimes in 48 hours. So take with that as you want. I took first half under.
Corbie, your sledgehammer play for Sweet 16 round.
Yeah, so I bet this, I think, on our last episode too, but I'm going to stick with the will, and it didn't do me right last time. Give me the Tennessee over 130.5. I believe we can get a 130.5. Tennessee is a team who plays very slow, and all year we've seen these low numbers. The issue is, I think these numbers are way too low due to the fact that if you've watched a Tennessee game, they're not currently playing basketball, they're playing rugby. It is awful to the eyes. It is a foul every single time down the court. Filipowski was bleeding from both sides of his face and his elbows. And so at some point, I just tend to believe that they have to call these. And with called fouls, you're getting free throws. And it's significant amount of free throws. FAU is a team who's going to drive the basket. They have the guard play to get to the line. And they have a big center, 7'1", who for some reason likes to take charges. I watched him take 6 charges in the UAB game. Strange. So I lean towards the over just in the idea that the refs start calling these. Also, this number just seems really low. You got a 128 in the matchup versus Duke. Duke significantly slower and better defense than FAU. You get a 141 versus a Missouri team who I would say is comparable to FAU. So 11 points off market to a Missouri team who Missouri dictated that pace in an 86-85 win. And then just scrolling through like the slowest team Tennessee has played all year. If you're just trying to go market comparables, they played a Ole Miss team on a neutral site in the SEC tournament of 128 total. So I think FAU is a significantly better offense. They want to push faster pace, and they have more to play for in this sense. To be getting 3 points off of market from what an Ole Miss team was, which that game was, it went over 128, and the pace got pushed down a lot because they were getting blown out. So I think that a lot of things point towards the over here. Give me Tennessee to get some foul calls headed their way. I thought that they should have in the Duke game. Pretty salty about that 125. And maybe an Owls outright. It wouldn't surprise me by any means. But for the sake of the show, just give me over 130.5.
Matthew, any thoughts on that one?
So first up, I have to say I was on the under of that Duke-Tennessee game. So I came up pretty happy there. I do tend to agree that the number is really low. However, what FAU is best at defensively is making teams go isolation and make them score to the ISO. They are number 2 nationally in terms of fewest assists per field goal made defensively. So they're going to make teams go one-on-one. Versus Tennessee, even without Zakai Ziegler, they're second nationally the other way. They have the second most assists per field goal made in the entire country. So they're not an ISO team. Like you said, they play rugby. They don't have one-on-one scores whatsoever. So if FAU is able to play their style, make Tennessee try to go one-on-one, I really don't know who's scoring for Tennessee. And on the other side, talking about maybe there has to be some regression on Tennessee allowing teams to shoot 26.4% from 3. That's a season mark. That's not like a sample mark, not a tournament mark. All season, 26%. And FAU is as dependent on 3-pointers as, almost any team in the country. And they got blown out by Mississippi earlier in the season in an SEC school, a much inferior SEC school, because they were able to defend the 3-point line. That's my worry. But if this number was higher, I would probably be a little less concerned. But at 131.5, I think you're probably fine. I can still see where that matchup might be a problem.
So we don't script the show. I'll have some disagreement here, Corbie, and you're the college basketball guy. I'm a college football guy. One thing I will push back on is Madison Square Garden. From betting for a long time, I tend to see a lot more unders, NIT unders, or at least the market likes to go under. High pressure game. There's an aura about playing an MSG. I think I did bet first half under. I think there might be a pretty almost wow factor, especially for FAU playing in this round. Tennessee, I just think is a dead nut under team. But you're right. From a price aspect, it is low, especially you get a foul fest. I think that was the best part of the handicap you had is, if they're playing rugby style and they're calling fouls, especially you get the late game foul fest, especially with the number priced 5.5, if that's where it's sitting with a minute left. You're going to get a ton of fouls. You'll get a Gonzaga TCU situation where you can get 15 points in a matter of 20 or 30 seconds. So I think full game, I don't disagree with you too much, but I did for first half. I bet the under in FAU Tennessee. And push back, Corbie.
Yeah, the Madison Square Garden first half unders have historically done really well too. So you're not sitting on a spot. That's too bad. I just think that that's probably why this number has so much value in my eyes. Not being in Madison Square Garden, make this 134, 135 probably would make more sense. And maybe that's where we're getting these points off of what I think it should be. That said, I think this would be a really good spot to hop in live, because another reason, what if the refs aren't calling these fouls? They're letting Tennessee play like they have basically all year. So to get a couple minutes in, maybe a slow start, and see the notion of how these refs are going to dictate this game. If there's 4 fouls in the first 2 minutes, which is highly possible how Tennessee has played basketball as of late, then I will be hopping all over this. But I still like the 130.5. I feel like we're in a pretty good spot there. Just seems like a really soft number, but I do understand the notion of this being in Madison Square Garden.
Good point. Closing it out. My sledgehammer play. It's going to sound a little square, but I am going to go to Las Vegas where I'm at. I'm going to lay the 3.5 with Connecticut. Couple reasons. Number one, you look at matchup wise. I think Arkansas obviously wants to drive to the hoop. I question their effectiveness in that area, especially with the big men down low for Connecticut. And if that's not effective and Arkansas has to rely on 3-point outside shooting, which they rarely do, but when they do, they're terrible at it. They don't even rank in the top 300 in 3-point shooting. Connecticut, meanwhile, top 10 3-point defense. So I just don't see how Arkansas offensively has much success here. And I know people in the chat and maybe Matthew and Corbie will roll their eyes at this, and I'm not sure how you quantify it, but watching all the teams over the last 4 or 5 days, Connecticut has that different look. I would say Alabama kind of does. Houston does when healthy. If UCLA was healthy, they would be. But, man, when you're watching all these teams and you're trying to look for weaknesses and whatnot, I just don't see too many weaknesses for Connecticut. I mean, you go through their entire starting five. They have the size. They have multiple players that can hit you from the outside. I love their strong forward, number 44, Jackson. I mean, he can bring the ball up the floor and play point guard for you if you need to. They got a 7-2 guy coming off the bench. They have the look of not only a team that, a Sweet 16 caliber team, they have the look of a Final Four national championship caliber team. And obviously they're a 4 seed. So I think there's been some value because of that 4 number along the seed line for them. Arkansas, obviously impressive win over Kansas. I just think they benefited from a Kansas team that was without their head coach. When adjustments needed to be made in the second half, Kansas didn't have them, and Arkansas did have the answers. I will say my hang-up is I think Musselman's a better coach than Hurley, and you give him extra time to prep. That's a concern of mine here. But I just think Connecticut, just very few weaknesses on that team. They're a deep team. They overwhelm you. We saw in both the Iona and the St. Mary's game. I will say St. Mary's best player getting hurt obviously helped a lot in Connecticut, but I still think they can overwhelm Arkansas here. Give me Connecticut. I'll lay the 3.5. Agree or disagree, guys? I'll start with you, Matthew.
Look, I have a Connecticut future. I have them in my Final Four, but I am a little worried about this matchup. I'll push back a little bit in the sense that the numbers with UConn's shooting are pretty, stark. They're 11-0 when they make 40% of their threes. They're 13-2 when they make 10 plus. And there are only 3 teams in the country that allow a fewer percentage of opponents' points from the 3-point line. So my question is, look, if UConn and Jordan Hawkins is an unbelievable shooter and Alex Caravan's an unbelievable shooter, they can hit deep contested threes. And if they're falling, UConn will win this game for sure. But if Arkansas can limit UConn's 3-point shooting, I worry about UConn's ability to score efficiently. And then on the other end, UConn fouls a ton and Arkansas gets to the line a ton. And that's my biggest worry. Now, I do agree with you. I'm not really sure how Arkansas scores either. And so I kind of lean under there. And I do think UConn wins this game, but I'm a little concerned, just a little bit.
What do you think, Corbie?
Yeah, being able to fade Musselman after taking his shirt off to the crowd's always good. He won his championship in that Kansas game. So we talked about it on the live stream when I hopped on. I didn't get to see it, but I have now seen it, and it was as y'all said, it was worth watching. But yeah, it's interesting. UConn's played really good basketball. As somebody notes in the chat, shot quality had St. Mary's winning that game by 10, which is interesting to note.
Can I ask you guys this? I mean, I know shot quality is very popular now and very effective. Market, they can affect the market. I personally watched games. I looked at it. On a game in and game out basis, I don't always agree. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that's the reason I brought it up. Is I 10 is strong there. I don't think I did think St. Mary's played a lot better than they're giving credit for, but 10 seems a rough patch. The thing that's most interesting for me is though, like let's just say shot quality had them winning by 10. The fact that UConn was able to get it done is what I'm wrapping all of this around, because I think that UConn has now played 2 of the better coached teams in the entire nation. And so to be able to continue to do it, even if the teams are just hitting lucky shots or they're missing bad shots, is worth noting the fact that they've made the adjustments in game to actually get the outright win. Because no matter what analytics site says the score should have been, you had to make the coaching adjustments to make that not happen and get the win at the end of the day. So I've been really impressed by Hurley and his ability to coach. I don't love him as a coach, but he has stepped up in this tournament so far.
Your thoughts on shot quality, Matthew? I'm anxious to hear it.
Look, I think it can sometimes be a great tool. It's especially a great tool if you lost a bet and it shows that you actually probably should
Yeah.
have won the bet. Like I had Kent State plus 4.5. I loved them
Yeah.
against Indiana, and shot quality that as a 1 point game, and they lost by 15. I think that at the end of the day, getting good shots really does matter, but some teams are just way better at shooting. And UConn, and this is why I do think UConn ends up pulling this game out, is yeah, shot quality doesn't always favor them. They have shot makers. They take tough shots sometimes, and Arkansas will make them take tough shots. But the eye test in a game and against for a team like UConn really does matter because they just have dudes that can put the ball in the basket, and shot quality does not detect that all the time.
Any closing thoughts on the Sweet 16? Any games matchups that we didn't get to that you guys want to break down or talk a little bit about? Any bets that you made that the lines moved out of range at this point?
Yeah, I have an Xavier to Final Four. I believe it was 11-1. I don't know what you can get currently. Felt decent about that, and then have watched them play in the tournament and feel less good about that. I just really like Sean Miller as a coach. I think he is getting underrated, and he has been all year. It seems like this Xavier team has been really good all year and continue to get a weak number. But now at the Sweet 16, I don't think you're sleeping past anybody to think the idea. Somebody in the chat asks Houston, Miami thoughts on the spread and total. That's an interesting game. I think the issue with Miami is they struggle against good defenses. We saw in the Drake game, Drake was able to shut them down. And what better defense is there than Houston? On the other hand, offensively, how does Houston score? They basically have to have Sasser essentially is their entire offense, and they have other pieces, but I would tend to argue that Miami has the guards to stay in front of these people. Like, I am one of the highest people in the nation on Isaiah Wong. I think Isaiah Wong is an amazing basketball player. He's had rough shooting patches all year, but as a glue guy and a facilitator to a team, I think he is very important. So if he can step up on Sasser when needed, I don't know how this game has points. It's going to be rough. I think Miami loses this game probably by 6 or 7. Not really entirely sure what the spread is off the top of my head, but
7.5. We've seen money come in on Houston today.
Houston.
I'm a part of it. I will say I laid 6.5 today. It sounds like a football spread, but 7 is pretty key in basketball too. I would not lay 7.5 now that it's moved to point. I did bet under too. I think unders right now at the current numbers. That's the sharper of the two sides. Did you bet it, Matthew?
Yeah, I have some thoughts in that game. I saw it at 6.5 last night, and I was hoping it would get to 5.5 because people like Miami's guards. And when I saw 7 and 9.5, I was not a happy guy. I have 2 quick stats for you. Yep. One, Houston has played 9 teams with sub 150 2-point percentage defenses, so teams that allow a lot of points inside. They've won by an average of 35 points in those 9 games. Miami is 246, so we're talking lower on that list, and it's not a bunch of random non-con teams. 4 of those games were conference games that they played. They've won by 35 points against bad 2-point defenses. Second, Miami is 1-5 against the spread when they allow 36% offensive rebound percentage or higher, and that's below Houston's average per game. So basically, Miami has really struggled against. Houston's great against teams that can't defend the rim. Miami struggled against teams that get offensive rebounds, and that's basically exactly this matchup. So I think it's a great matchup for Houston, but 7.5 is so much for a Miami team that, like you said, Isaiah Wong's an elite shot maker. Nigel Pack is playing well, and Omier can defend the rim. If now at this point, if I can see a 6.5 again, I will get on it.
Any closing thoughts, guys?
Yeah, hop on. Let's. I think if you're gonna try to, I got asked a lot this morning about futures bets because you can hop Sweet 16 to champion. I think if you want to do something like that, Brad talked about it on another show, but mechanical parlay, especially from Sweet 16 on, the holds on these futures are ridiculous. Also, you can get you can shop when you do a mechanical parlay. You can shop lines. So use BetStamp, little plug there, but shop to the best line, and you could get a better number on a mechanical parlay than you would ever be able to get. I saw a lot of people talking about the 50-1 for Miami, and it's like, okay, well, if you think that's going to happen, just parlay it through. They're going to be what? Plus, I don't know what they are in this Houston game, but you're going to be able to get close to 50-1 by championship time.
Oh, at least. I mean, they're going to be an underdog, big underdog this round. I mean, even no matter who wins the Texas Xavier game, there'll be an underdog there. Whoever comes out of the other region, there'll be a big underdog in the Final Four. And they're likely playing Alabama in the championship game. They're a big underdog there again. And then you could, the beauty of the mechanical parlay, you can just stop. I mean, so don't be betting in the stuff with 25 and 30% holds. Now, with that being said, look, if there's an off-market future number, if the whole world's dealing 40 to 1 or 50 to 1, you see some book dealing 75 to 1, by all means, and put some pizza money or something on a future tickets. But I just think too many people do that. Matthew, your thoughts? Do you got a bunch of futures right now? I'm not a future guys in college basketball. That's me personally.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge future guy in terms of the tournament this go around. I literally my main one that I put some money on was UConn to win the championship, and that was before the bracket was set. I just thought that they'd be a 3 or a 4 and have an easy-ish path with the amount of talent they have, and that's basically played itself out. Yeah,
tough region. John, one last question in the chat before we sign off. Michigan State, Kansas State. Quickly, I bet Michigan State on the open. I laid pick. Obviously, the markets agreed with me. I just thought you give Tom Izzo extra time to prep. Been there, done that in this round. Kansas State's, got a young coach. I mean, great story. Kudos for them for coming together. A team that basically didn't play. I mean, basically a brand new team this year. So I just figured the market would be on Michigan State. I also lean under. I mean, you're hearing a lot of that. So did you guys bet the Michigan State, Kansas State game?
Agree with both side and total there. Michigan State, you give Izzo any amount of time. Listen, Izzo is a track record of his own. He's proven this time and time again. Kansas State, an amazing story. I'm very happy to see Keontae Johnson was able to find a new home and do something after that incident in Florida. Love him as a basketball player, and if they were to win this game, there's not many players I would be rooting for more than him. That said, I just don't think that they have enough going on. They're a really well-groomed pickup basketball team with the talent output that they have, and Michigan State is a basketball team. So I think this is just too much Michigan State in a game that's going to be a really good game, but not one really good for anybody who wants to watch a lot of points.
Matthew, did you bet it?
I've not bet it yet. I think Michigan State's a little overvalued in terms of their talent level and where I have them ranked nationally. So I'm going to live bet this game. If it's played like a Big Ten game where they don't call any fouls, let them play physical, that heavily favors Michigan State. If it's ref like a Big 12 game, aka 30 free throws per team, that's a big advantage for K-State. Michigan State really struggles getting to the line and they foul a bunch. So I'm going to let this one play out at the start, sort of like what we were talking about with that Tennessee game, how they're calling fouls. I think that really favors Kansas State if it's a physical game with fouls being called. So I'll let that one go for now.
Great points, Matthew. Well, I'll tell you what, guys, that should do it here. Before we sign off, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. If you really enjoyed the content today, make sure you're sharing it with your friends. Alongside Matthew Winick, alongside Corbie Craig, I'm merely Brad Powers. You just watched Hit the Books, part of the Hammer Betting Network.